Just think, 10, 20 years from now, when people ask, what did you do for Easter 2020? What are you going to have to tell them? Coming up to this week, I thought of one of my favorite spiritual books, He Leadeth Me, by Father Walter Chyzyk. Father Chyzyk was an American priest who was a missionary to Russia, then the Soviet Union, about 70 years ago. In the course of his work, he was captured and imprisoned, first in Moscow and later in different camps of the Gulag system. During this time, for many years he was deprived of the ability to celebrate Mass or to practice his faith in any of the ways he had previously done it. I think how all of us can relate to this loss, although our circumstances now are certainly much more comfortable than those that he had to endure. Reflecting on those years, he later wrote, "Sometimes I think that those who have never been deprived of an opportunity to say or hear Mass do not really appreciate what a treasure the Mass is." So we can ask ourselves, how is our faith going to grow because of the times that we are now experiencing, even though it's a time when we cannot regularly receive the sacraments like we're used to? What are we going to do in these next few days so that 10 or 20 years from now, when people ask us, what was Easter 2020 like? We'll be able to share how, even though this Holy Week and Easter were very different from any we've experienced before or will in the future, that it was still special. How are we going to find a way to mark these holy days, even though they will be in a way very different than we will ever do again? As I've been saying throughout this time, these changes we have to practice to help to stem the spread of the disease call us to be creative in how we practice our faith. Now, parents, for you in particular, I hope that these next few days will be ones in which you share with your children in your own words and from your own experience why these days matter. Why does Holy Thursday matter? Why does the Mass matter? Why does it matter for us that Jesus died on the cross? And why does it matter for us that he rose from the dead? Now, I hope your family will be able to join us for the live-streamed Masses we'll be having over these next few days. And I also hope that you'll find some different ways to mark these days in your own homes, when you, like Father Chyzyk, will need to find ways to keep the spirit of these days, even if not the practices to which we're accustomed. Perhaps on Holy Thursday night, at your dinner as a family, you might read through the Last Supper account of St. John's Gospel, chapters 13 to 17, perhaps taking maybe just a few different passages from those chapters and then sharing how they speak to you. On Good Friday, you could take the hours from noon to 3 p.m. as a time of silence. Turn off devices, don't watch entertainment, and just have a quiet time in your home to remember those hours when Christ hung dying on the cross for our salvation. For adults, a reminder that Good Friday is a day of fast and abstinence. Now, beyond this, as a whole family, you might pray the Stations of the Cross or Divine Mercy Chaplet, both of which can be found on our parish website. You might also watch, as a family, the powerful movie The Passion of the Christ. Finally, and this should be an easy one, I really hope that all of you are going to find a way to celebrate Easter as best you can. Now, no, we might not be able to have the big parties and big family gatherings that we're used to, but still, how in our own homes, with our own families, will we find a way to celebrate? Father Chyzyk recounted how many years later he was still inspired by how, even in the prison camps, the Christians would be able to get together to celebrate Easter in very limited circumstances, but perhaps with a more profound reflection on what the feast is really about, what it really means for each of us that Christ is risen from the dead. Now remember, this is a day of joy for us. Yes, we'll be limited in some ways, but spiritually, how can we encounter the mystery of what Easter is really about in a whole new way this year? Because no matter what circumstances we find ourselves in, there is nothing that matters more in our lives than that Christ is risen from the dead, and that he invites all of us, through our faith in him, to share in this eternal life. And for this, we must celebrate as best we can. So I hope that all of you have a very blessed Paschal Triduum and a very happy Easter as well. Please know of my prayers.